History is not just a collection of dusty dates and forgotten kings. It is a living, breathing story about us. It tells us who we are, where we came from, and perhaps where we are going. When we look at the great civilizations of the past, we often marvel at their achievements. The towering pyramids of Egypt, the magnificent Colosseum of Rome, the intricate goldwork of the Aztecs. We see power, genius, and a world that seems impossibly distant. But if we look closer, we find something far more relatable and urgent. We find human stories of crisis, collapse, and survival that echo loudly in our own time, on this very day, November 20th, 2025. The story of every great civilization is also a story of its end. Empires that seemed eternal eventually crumbled. Societies that reached incredible heights of art and knowledge vanished into dust. For centuries we have asked why. Was it war, disease, climate change, or simply bad luck? The truth is often a complex mix of these pressures, a perfect storm of challenges that overwhelmed even the mightiest of powers. By exploring these moments of collapse, we are not just sightseeing in the ruins of the past. We are holding up a mirror to our own world and asking ourselves some very difficult questions about our own future and stability. This journey takes us into the heart of 4 spectacular collapses. We will travel to ancient Rome, where an empire that stretched across the known world began to fracture from within. We will witness the final dramatic days of Cleopatra's Egypt, the last gasp of a 3,000-year-old tradition. We will stand with the Aztecs as they face an unforeseen catastrophe from across the sea, and we will watch as the world of the Japanese samurai is forced to change forever. These are not just grand, impersonal histories. They are tales of individuals caught in the tidal wave of change, whose lives and choices shape the end of their worlds. To understand their stories, we will look at the objects they left behind. A simple pot, a golden necklace, or a stone carving can speak volumes. These artifacts are our direct connection to the people who made and used them. They are clues that help us decode the strengths and, crucially, the hidden weaknesses of a society. They reveal stories of immense wealth and desperate poverty, of unshakable faith and growing uncertainty, of brilliant leadership and fatal mistakes. Through these objects, we can move beyond the myths and get closer to the human reality of what it felt like to live through the twilight of a great civilization. At the end of the 4th century AD, the Roman Empire was the superpower of its day. Its territory stretched from the cold shores of Britain to the sandy deserts of North Africa. Its engineers built aqueducts that carried water for hundreds of miles, and its armies were legendary for their discipline and might. To the people living within its borders, Rome must have felt permanent, an empire destined to last 1,000 years. But beneath this glittering surface of power and prosperity, deep and dangerous cracks were beginning to form. The story of Rome's fall is not one of a single sudden blow, but of a slow, grinding decay from the inside out. The problem was not a lack of resources, but how they were shared. A tiny, fantastically wealthy elite lived in unimaginable luxury, while the vast majority of the population struggled. This extreme inequality created a society that was deeply divided and unstable. The rich, known as the senatorial class, owned vast estates and spent fortunes on lavish villas and extravagant parties. They saw themselves as the true Romans, the guardians of a glorious tradition. Yet their immense wealth was built on the backs of the poor and the enslaved, creating a simmering resentment that weakened the very fabric of the empire. This wasn't just unfair, it was strategically foolish, leaving the state fragile. One of the most significant pressures came from outside its long borders. For decades, groups of people the Romans called barbarians, like the Goths and Vandals, had been migrating towards the empire. They were not always invaders seeking conquest. Many were refugees, driven from their own lands by conflict or climate change, and they were seeking safety and opportunity within the Roman world. The empire's response was often confused and inconsistent. Sometimes it welcomed these newcomers, enlisting them in the army. At other times, it treated them with cruelty and suspicion, creating new enemies right on its doorstep and making the frontier a place of constant, simmering conflict. The leadership during this critical period was often weak and ineffective. Emperors like Honorius, who came to the throne in 395 AD, were insulated from the reality of their crumbling state. They were surrounded by court intrigue and focused more on personal power than on solving the empire's deep-seated problems. While Honorius was safe behind the walls of his capital in Ravenna, his generals were fighting each other, and the city of Rome itself was left vulnerable. This failure of leadership meant that when the final crisis came, with the arrival of Alaric and his Visigoths in 410 AD, the empire was too divided and broken to mount an effective defense. The sack of Rome was not the cause of the fall, but the ultimate symptom of a sickness that had been festering for generations. Few objects tell the story of Rome's fatal internal divisions quite like the Projecta casket. Discovered on the Esquiline Hill in Rome, this magnificent silver-gilt treasure chest is a masterpiece of late Roman craftsmanship. It is part of a larger hoard known as the Esquiline treasure, a collection of silver objects belonging to a wealthy Christian couple, Projecta and Secundus. The casket is decorated with intricate scenes from classical mythology and portraits of the couple themselves. An inscription on the lid advises them to live in Christ, a message that blends the new Christian faith with the old pagan traditions of Roman aristocratic life, showing a world in transition. On the surface, the casket is a symbol of everything that made Rome great: its wealth, its artistry, and its sophisticated culture. It speaks of a world of learning, luxury, and refined taste. This was the Rome of the elite, a world of opulent villas, lavish banquets, and beautiful objects. For Projecta and her husband, this casket was likely a wedding gift, a container for their precious perfumes and toiletries. It represents the private, privileged bubble in which the Roman 1% lived. They were insulated from the harsh realities faced by the majority of the empire's citizens, a world of poverty, instability, and constant anxiety that existed just outside their villa walls. But the casket tells another story, a darker one. Its very existence highlights the staggering inequality that was tearing the empire apart. While families like Projecta's could afford such breathtakingly expensive items, the Roman state was going bankrupt. It struggled to pay its soldiers, maintain its roads, and defend its borders. The tax burden fell heavily on the working poor and small landowners, while the super-rich aristocracy often used their influence to avoid paying their fair share. This created a doom loop. The state grew weaker, the poor grew more desperate, and the rich retreated further into their private worlds of luxury, hoarding wealth that could have saved the empire. The Projecta casket is therefore a ghost from a dying world. It is a snapshot of a society fatally out of balance, where the gap between the haves and the have-nots had grown into an unbridgeable chasm. It shows us that the threat to Rome was not just from the barbarian armies at the gates. The more dangerous enemy was within. It was the corrosion of social cohesion, the failure of the elite to see beyond their own self-interest, and the creation of a society so unequal that it no longer had the collective will or resources to survive. The beautiful object is a relic of a civilization that had, in many ways, already collapsed from the inside, long before its walls were breached. For 3 millennia, the civilization of ancient Egypt stood as a titan of human history, seemingly as timeless as the Nile River itself. It was a land of pharaohs, pyramids, and a profound spiritual connection to the gods and the afterlife. But by the time its last pharaoh, Cleopatra VII, came to the throne in 51 BC, this ancient world was in a state of profound crisis. Her reign was not the serene continuation of a golden age, but a desperate, brilliant fight for survival against a perfect storm of internal decay, environmental disaster, and the relentless ambition of a rising superpower. Rome. Cleopatra's story is the story of the end of a world. The dynasty she inherited, the Ptolemaic line, was plagued by dysfunction. Descended from one of Alexander the Great's generals, the Greek-speaking Ptolemies had ruled Egypt for centuries, but their family was infamous for its brutal infighting. Siblings murdered siblings for the throne, and civil war was a constant threat. This toxic political environment created instability that rippled through the entire kingdom. When Cleopatra ascended the throne, she did so alongside her younger brother, and their relationship quickly soured into open conflict. This internal strife left Egypt vulnerable, a kingdom divided against itself and ripe for foreign interference. As if the political turmoil wasn't enough, Egypt was struck by a catastrophic environmental crisis. A massive volcanic eruption, likely in a distant part of the world, threw so much ash into the atmosphere that it disrupted global weather patterns. For Egypt, this was disastrous. The annual flooding of the Nile, the lifeblood of the entire civilization which irrigated crops and fertilized the land, failed. This led to widespread crop failure, famine, and social unrest. The pharaoh was traditionally seen as the guarantor of this natural cycle. When the Nile failed, it was seen as a failure of the ruler and a sign that the cosmic order was broken. This internal chaos made Egypt easy prey for the expanding Roman Republic. Rome was hungry for Egypt's immense wealth, particularly its grain, which was needed to feed the Roman populace. Roman politicians and generals began to meddle in Egyptian politics, backing different sides in the royal family's power struggles and demanding huge sums of money. Cleopatra was a shrewd and intelligent leader who understood this danger better than anyone. She used her famous relationships with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony, not just as romantic liaisons, but as strategic political alliances, desperate gambles to try and preserve her kingdom's independence from the Roman wolf at the door. Her struggle was heroic, but ultimately doomed. The Rosetta Stone is one of the most famous museum objects in the world, celebrated as the key that unlocked the secrets of Egyptian hieroglyphs. But, you know, this slab of black granite is much more than just a linguistic tool. It is a vital piece of political propaganda from a kingdom in deep trouble. The text carved on it is a decree issued in 196 BC, over a century before Cleopatra's reign, during the rule of Ptolemy V. It lists all the good things the young king has done for the country, such as giving gifts to the temples and canceling taxes. It was written in 3 scripts, hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Greek, so that everyone, from the priests to the Greek rulers to the administrators, could understand it. When we read the decree closely, we are not just reading a list of royal achievements. We are seeing a government desperately trying to shore up its authority. Why would a king need to broadcast his generosity so publicly? Well, the answer is that the Ptolemaic kingdom was facing serious internal rebellion and a crisis of legitimacy. The text speaks of forgiving debts and releasing prisoners, actions taken to pacify a restless population that was suffering under heavy taxation and the strain of civil unrest. The decree was a public relations exercise, an attempt to win back the support of the powerful Egyptian priesthood and the general populace by highlighting the king's benevolence. Another fascinating clue from this era is an object known as a blank cartouche stela. A cartouche was an oval frame used in Egyptian inscriptions to encircle the name of the pharaoh, a powerful symbol of royal authority and divine order. This particular stone slab, dating to the time of Cleopatra's family, has a beautifully carved scene of a king making an offering to the gods. But the cartouche where the king's name should be has been left completely empty. This is an extraordinary omission. It suggests a period of such intense political instability and rapid turnover of rulers that the stone carvers literally did not know whose name to write. It is a silent, stony testament to a kingdom in chaos. These artifacts, the Rosetta Stone and the blank cartouche, are like medical scans revealing the sickness within the Egyptian state long before its final collapse. They show a dynasty that was losing its grip. The Ptolemies were forced to constantly negotiate their power with their subjects, using tax breaks and propaganda to quell dissent. The authority of the pharaoh, once absolute, was now so fragile that it could be left blank. When Cleopatra inherited this kingdom, it was already hollowed out by decades of infighting and mismanagement. She was the last, brilliant leader of a civilization whose foundations had already crumbled, fending off a Roman takeover that, in retrospect, seems almost inevitable. In the year 1519, the Aztec Empire was the dominant power in Mesoamerica. Its magnificent capital, Tenochtitlan, was honestly a marvel of engineering. A vast city built on an island in the middle of a lake, with a population larger than any European city of the time. The Aztecs were sophisticated astronomers, fierce warriors, and masters of a complex political system. From their capital, they ruled over millions of people. Yet within just 2 years, their mighty empire would be utterly destroyed. The fall of the Aztecs is a shocking story of how a powerful civilization can be brought down by a combination of internal weaknesses and a devastating external shock. The Aztec Empire was immensely powerful, but it was not universally loved. Its power was based on military conquest and the extraction of tribute, goods, food, and people for sacrifice, from the city-states it had conquered. This system created deep resentment among the subject peoples. While Tenochtitlan grew rich and powerful, many surrounding communities felt oppressed and exploited. This internal fragility was a critical weakness that the Aztecs themselves may not have fully appreciated. Their empire was a collection of resentful subjects, not a unified nation, and this lack of cohesion would prove to be a fatal flaw when an outside force appeared. That outside force arrived in the form of Hernán Cortés and his small band of Spanish conquistadors. When Cortés landed, the Aztec emperor, Moctezuma II, was unsure how to react. He sent the Spaniards incredible gifts of gold and turquoise, perhaps hoping to impress them or persuade them to leave. But the sight of such wealth had the opposite effect, inflaming the Spaniards' greed and convincing them that this was a land worth conquering. Crucially, Cortés was a skilled political operator. He quickly understood the local resentments against the Aztecs and began to forge alliances with their enemies, building a massive army of indigenous warriors who were eager to overthrow their Aztec overlords. The final collapse came with terrifying speed. After Moctezuma was killed and the Spanish were temporarily driven from Tenochtitlan, they returned to lay siege to the city. But the most lethal weapon the Spanish brought was not their steel swords or cannons, it was disease. Smallpox, a disease to which the indigenous peoples of the Americas had no immunity, swept through the crowded city. It killed hundreds of thousands of people, including many of the Aztec leaders and warriors, weakening their ability to resist. Some historians even speculate that the famous turquoise mask of Xiuhticuhtli, with its mottled appearance, might have been seen by the Aztecs as depicting the blisters of this terrifying new plague, forever linking the divine with the devastation that destroyed their world. For over 250 years, from the 17th to the mid-19th century, Japan lived in a state of self-imposed isolation. Under the rule of the Tokugawa shogunate, the country was peaceful and stable. This was the age of the samurai, a warrior class that had evolved into a powerful ruling bureaucracy. They were the guardians of a unique and highly refined culture, defined by strict social codes, artistic pursuits like Zen gardening, and the iconic sword that was the symbol of their status. This world, known as the Edo period, seemed stable and unchanging. deliberately cut off from the turbulent changes happening in the rest of the world. But this carefully constructed isolation could not last forever. The end of this era did not come from a slow internal decay, but from a sudden and overwhelming external shock. In 1853, a fleet of American warships, commanded by Commodore Matthew Perry, steamed into Edo Bay. These vessels, powered by steam and armed with modern cannons, were nicknamed the Black Ships by the Japanese. Their arrival was a terrifying demonstration of Western industrial and military power. Perry carried a letter from the American president demanding that Japan open its ports to trade. The shogunate, whose samurai armies were still fighting with swords and arrows, had no answer to this modern military technology. They were faced with a stark choice: open up, or risk being colonized like so many other nations in Asia. The arrival of the Black Ships shattered Japan's confidence and triggered a profound political crisis. It exposed the weakness of the shogunate, which had failed to keep the foreigners out, and it sparked a fierce national debate. Some argued for resisting the West, while others believed that the only way for Japan to survive was to modernize and adopt Western technology as quickly as possible. This conflict led to a short but decisive civil war, which ended with the overthrow of the shogun in 1868. This event, known as the Meiji Restoration, returned power to the emperor and marked the beginning of a revolutionary transformation of Japanese society. The new Meiji government made a deliberate choice to dismantle the old world to build a new one. Their goal was to make Japan strong enough to stand on equal terms with the Western powers. This meant creating a modern conscript army, building factories, and adopting a Western-style constitution. The samurai class, the very symbol of old Japan, was abolished. Their privileges were stripped away, and they were forbidden from wearing their two swords in public. In the space of a single generation, a way of life that had endured for centuries was gone. The fall of the samurai was not a collapse into chaos, but a controlled demolition, a conscious decision by Japan's new leaders to sacrifice their past in order to secure their future. As we delve into the stories of Rome, Egypt, the Aztecs, and Japan, it's easy to see them as distant, almost mythical tales. But the forces that brought these great civilizations to their knees are hauntingly familiar. The challenges they faced are not relics of the past. They are the very same issues that dominate our news headlines and political debates today in the 21st century. The fall of these ancient worlds serves as a powerful and unsettling reminder that our own complex, globalized civilization is not immune to the pressures that have undone so many others before us. Their ghosts are alive and well in our modern world. Consider the crisis of migration that destabilized the Roman Empire. The Romans struggled to manage large numbers of people moving across their borders, often fleeing conflict and climate shifts in their own lands. Today, we see this same dynamic playing out on a global scale, as millions of people are displaced by war, poverty, and the escalating effects of climate change. Like the Romans, our modern societies are grappling with how to respond, with compassion or with fear, with integration or with walls. The Roman experience warns us that treating desperate people as a threat can create the very instability we seek to avoid, turning potential allies into enemies. The extreme inequality that hollowed out the Roman Empire from within is another ghost that walks among us. The gap between the ultra-rich and the rest of the population is wider today than it has been in a century. We see a global elite who live in a world apart, while billions struggle with stagnant wages, insecure work, and rising costs. The story of the Projecta casket is a potent allegory for our time, a symbol of breathtaking wealth existing alongside systemic decay. History teaches us that societies that become too unequal lose their social cohesion. They become brittle, divided, and ultimately unable to summon the collective will to solve their biggest problems. The fall of the Aztecs demonstrates the catastrophic potential of a pandemic, a lesson we have had to relearn in the most painful way. A novel disease, smallpox, to which the population had no immunity, did more to destroy their empire than any Spanish sword. It reminds us that in an interconnected world, a biological threat can spread with terrifying speed and bring even the most powerful societies to a standstill. Likewise, the climate shock that crippled Cleopatra's Egypt by causing the Nile to fail is a chilling preview of the environmental challenges we face today. Our own civilization's Nile is the stable climate system we have always relied upon, and it is now dangerously out of balance. Looking back at the ruins of fallen empires can feel discouraging, a gloomy catalog of failure. It can lead us to a sense of fatalism, a belief that all civilizations are destined to rise and inevitably fall. But that is not the only lesson we can take from these stories. The past is not a script that we are doomed to repeat. Instead, it is a vast library of case studies, offering us invaluable insights into the nature of societal stress and collapse. The real question is not whether we face crises, we always will, but whether we can learn from the successes and failures of those who came before us. One of the clearest lessons is that leadership matters. The fate of these civilizations was often sealed by the choices made by their rulers. In Rome, we saw how insulated and self-interested leaders like Honorius failed to address the deep structural problems of their empire. In contrast, Japan's Meiji leaders made the difficult but decisive choice to radically reform their society to meet a new reality. Good leadership is not about avoiding crises, but about confronting them with courage, foresight, and a sense of collective purpose. It requires looking beyond short-term political gain and making difficult choices for the long-term survival of society. Another crucial lesson is about resilience. What makes a society strong is not just its military might or its economic wealth, but its social cohesion and adaptability. The Aztec Empire was powerful but brittle, its foundation of conquest creating resentments that shattered under pressure. Japan, on the other hand, proved remarkably resilient, able to transform itself completely in the face of an existential threat. A resilient society is one that is fair and inclusive, where people feel a sense of shared identity and mutual obligation. It is adaptable, willing to change its old ways when they no longer serve, and it invests in knowledge and understanding to better anticipate the challenges ahead. Ultimately, the study of these fallen worlds is a profound act of self-reflection. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own time. Are we, like the Roman elite, becoming too unequal to remain stable? Are we, like the Ptolemies, ignoring environmental warning signs until it is too late? Are we responding to global challenges with division and fear, or with cooperation and wisdom? The people of the past were no different from us. They loved their children, built their communities, and believed their world will last forever. Their stories are a gift, a warning, and an invitation. They invite us to look honestly at the cracks in our own world and to find the wisdom and the will to write a different ending for our own civilization.